Good morning, y'all. Overcast and chilly day here this morning in southern Michigan. Came out to the vehicle and actually cranked it to put the heat on a little bit. I'm sitting out here in a jacket and long sleeve shirt. That chilly here this morning. Anyway, I've got a few loose ends to tie up here, and I'll try to cover everything. May have to break this into a couple of videos depending on how long this one runs. Every time I come out here to make a video on something, it seems invariably I go back in and upload it, and oh crap, I forgot to comment about whatever. So I'm sure y'all have the same problem. First thing from the other day, I talked about fuel prices and the driver shortages and everything, and mentioned GasBuddy.com. Wanted to add about that the beauty of that site is that it is searchable. It's like a big database. So you can search for prices, in your hometown, by zip code, by state, whatever. So you can set it to look for your hometown, or if you're going down to see your folks, or you can check what the filling station down by the grocery store is doing, that sort of thing. So you can look around for the best price on fuel. So there's one loose end wrapped up. For those of you who watched my Baofeng review, something I forgot here. See if I can get this on the camera. Okay, this is the battery pack for a Baofeng. I bought an extra one. I got it off Amazon. I got paid $10 or $12 for it. They're not real expensive. Purpose for that is that when the one in the radio starts getting low, I can disconnect that one from the radio, put the other one on, put the dead one on the charger, and I'm still running. And then by the time it's recharged, the battery I just put on the Baofeng is still good. I've always got a full battery at the ready. So those of you who have Baofengs, look around on Amazon or eBay or anything, just do a search for UV5R batteries and see what the best deal you can get on them will be. Never a bad idea to have extras of those on hand. That way the equipment's always running. You're never caught with a dead radio. And that way too, if the cell grid goes down for whatever reason, we hit an SHTF, whatever, you've got your communication still in place. On a side note with that too, if you ever lose power there at the house, we have a storm, the grid goes down, whatever. It's a good thing to have an inverter for out in the vehicle that you can plug in, say, to the cigarette lighter in the vehicle. Then you can bring the charger out, plug it into that, run it off the vehicle battery to recharge your batteries. I did that back in 2006. We had an ice storm come through my part of Illinois. Lost power for about 3 days. Went down on a Thursday night. Didn't come back until midday Sunday. Naturally, we didn't have any TV or anything. I hooked up my shortwave radio to one of my marine batteries, so I still had radio. My wife, she liked to watch the DVDs then on the laptop. And when the battery would go dead, I'd take it down to the van, plug it into the inverter, plug that into the cigarette lighter, recharge the battery on the laptop. When it was recharged, she was good to go. So, there's a thought on that. Let's see, what else have we got here on my list of loose ends. Those of you too looking to get into the hobby of amateur radio and that have concerns, this is for those of you involved in prepping. I know everybody's worried about the government tracking you And with GPSs now and tracking devices in our phones, that's honestly a legitimate concern. I've seen folks worry about tracking chips in like the radio equipment and your name and address being on your license and that sort of thing, and that the government would come after you. Let me set those fears aside. That is not a problem. RFID chips and things like that are not in any of the amateur radio equipment, at least that I know about. As far as your name and address being on the amateur radio license, all they want is the mailing address. It's that simple. You can set it as your P.O. box, put it over at your bug out location over at your mom and dad's place, whatever. They don't care. Just so they got some place to mail a license, at least years ago. Nowadays they're doing all that online. They still have to have a physical mailing address. Years ago, they did have two separate lines on the forms for your license. One was a mailing address. The second was station location. And oftentimes you could just put in that same as mailing address. You know, if you lived at 123 Main Street in whatever town, that would work. That was the physical location of your equipment. But the problem was if you lived on a farm and say your address was Rural Route 2 or General Delivery or something, you know, if they started having problems with you interfering with somebody, or for whatever reason wanted to come inspect your station, they wanted to know, where do we find your station? So you had to mark in there, you know, Schmidt Lane, 0.2 of a mile from the intersection of Crossroad, you know, whatever. But that has since been removed. That was taken off back in the 80s. So, you know, put those fears aside. So, and if we do go into a grid down situation where, you know, a bad SHTF, where martial law and all this kind of stuff, they're going to have bigger fish to fry than trying to come after hams, or, you know, track you through the equipment or anything. And to direction find a ham to find you specifically, they'd have to use some of their direction finding techniques, you know, triangulation, and start searching for where where your signal is strongest to try to find you. Wanted to comment too on those of you who's curious about Morse code. The learning of it is the hardest part. Just like the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s when we were kids. I know for me, some of that was a booger bear coming up, but you know, once you grow and you start going through grade school, you get into high school, you don't even think about it anymore. You just go along to the point where you start running 15, 20, 25 words a minute on the air. It becomes conversational. You don't think about it. I do take notes when I'm running Morse, mainly because my short-term memory is stinko, and if I don't write down the name and the location and the signal reports and all that, I will forget. That's the only reason behind that. So all the more reason, get in there, learn it, and enjoy it. Have a good time with it. That is the thing. If you make it a chore, you're not going to like it. Papa Prepper, this part goes out to you. You asked about it last night, so I will try to cover this here a little bit, and then I'm going to get back in the house and get this uploaded and warm up a little bit. Papa Prepper was asking about some about antennas and distances for the different ham bands. In the interest of time, I won't spell out the different ham bands for you. There are charts all over the internet. All you got to do is do a Google search for ham bands, and ICOM and some of them make really good charts that you could even print out if you wanted for the different bands. We refer to them in meters: 160, 80, 40, 30, 20, 17, 12, 15, 10, 6, 2, 220, 440. Now, as the frequency goes down, you start going down. 160 meters is 1.8 to 2 megahertz. 80 is 3.5 to 4. Well, I have to correct that. You'll hear a lot of guys talk about 80 meters and 75. Same handband, but here's the kicker. When they refer to 80 meters, they're generally talking about the CW portion of the band, the low end of the band. 3.5 to 3.6, 3.7. When they're talking about 75, they're usually referring to the phone portion of the band, 3.6, 3.7, up to 4 megahertz. 40 runs 7.3. As you're going down in frequency, antenna size increases. There are the formulas online, for half wave, it's 468 over frequency. So you can see as frequency is going down, the size of the antenna is getting bigger. Antenna-wise, on the lower bands, 80 through 15 or so, dipoles are big. Center-fed Zeps, G5 RVs, Carolina Wyndhams, loops, and you to look at these, you can do a Google search to look around and see what I'm talking about. Some of the articles in that online could probably describe them a lot better than what I could. On some of the higher bands, beams and verticals start getting more popular. Most notably 20 through 10. To build a beam for 80 and 40 meters, you're looking at monster size antennas. And the rotors and everything, you'd need to turn them. Beams get directional. You're looking at big stuff. Plus, something like that, if you have an ice storm, it runs a risk of bringing the antennas down for you. Distance-wise, on all the lower bands, it is very possible to get into all 50 states. And there are guys that have done that. There's actually an award called Worked All States. The lower bands, I've found it more difficult to get the farther distances, get out to the West Coast and that sort of thing. The closer in stuff for me has always been easier. 40 and 20, you can talk anywhere and everywhere, all through the States, all into Europe, depending on how propagation's going. 10 meters is good for local up to 30 or 40 miles, and then first hop of outside the skip zone past that for the distance stations is typically 500-600 miles out, and getting into the West Coast from the Midwest is generally not a problem as long as the propagation's there with you. We are at the bottom of the solar cycle right now. Solar cycle 25 is starting to increase though, so give it a little time, and hopefully things will be picking up here a little bit. The lower bands, 80 and 160, tend to be nighttime bands. Think of the AM broadcast band when you tune across for your local AM stations. During the day, you're only going to hear local stuff. But then at night, I'm sure we've all done it. You tune across at night, and you're going to hear stations from all over the place. On 80 and 160, it's much the same thing. During the day, atmospheric absorption is going to take a lot of the signal away. 40 and 20, 40, 30, 20 are generally open pretty well 24/7. Again, it's propagational, depending on what kind of mood the propagation gods are in. Dictates where you're going to talk and for how long. 15, 12, and 10 tend to be daytime bands, but to hear stuff in the middle of the night is not unheard of. There's a phenomenon known as sporadic E or E-skip. And there's a reason it's known as sporadic. It can come in at the drop of a hat and can be gone just that quick. I've seen signals coming in from Texas and California that were S9 plus many times, and it seems like you literally snap your fingers and they're gone. And it works that fast. I mean, boom, and they're gone. Very strange phenomenon. Now you start getting up on the higher bands, 2 meters, 220, 440. This is local stuff. You're talking to your local folks here, folks in the local radio club, whatnot. Although there are people who, on those bands, will build great big beams, great big directional antennas, and really start to make some noise, get some high-powered amplifiers going. And there are people who have, on 2 meters, 440, what have you, have done, worked all states, that sort of thing. Another big award there is, let me get this right, they go for what's called grid squares, okay? And basically, every corner of this planet has been broken down into a grid square. I'm in one, you're in one, everybody's in a grid square. And working 100 grid squares, this I might add, we love to contest on ham bands. Working all 3,000 and something American counties is a big one. Worked all states. Worked all CQ zones. Worked all ITU zones. Worked all continents. DXCC is a big one, where you work and confirm 100 countries, plus your own. So it's all a matter of what you want to do and how you want to do it. And these are all things you can research online. I'm just trying to help push y'all here along the way. I've never done any of that on 2 meters and 440. I mean, it's a neat phenomenon, but just something I've never had the money or the patience to pursue. Ironically, to show y'all what 2 meters can do with a band opening, I was still living back in Illinois, my city called Belleville, right there about 10, 12 miles east of St. Louis, and I was talking to one of the locals on the local repeater. And we're just having a normal chit-chat. I won't go into how I was hearing this, but I was also hearing, whenever I would unkey, I would hear the same repeater out of Evansville, Indiana, unkeying. I could hear the ID and the courtesy tone from the repeater in Evansville. So it can do some strange things. And y'all, we're looking at about 19 minutes here, so let me wrap this up. Personal note to Prepper 4. You asked about CBs. Let me get this video uploaded, and here later today or tomorrow I will get another video and deal exclusively with CBing. Got a lot there, I can say, too. So that's been another very interesting hobby. One I've been in since my dad first put a CB in the car in 1980. And that started the chain of events getting me into amateur radio. So that's been a neat hobby through the years. All right, y'all, here you go. So 19 minutes and 40 seconds of loose ends and ham radio talk. With that, talk to y'all later.